I have a cheeky question for you. Whose side are you on anyway? I'm asking for humanity. I have a quick story about a monk, a sandwich, and common sense. But I'm going to start with some biblical wisdom, specifically John chapter 3, verse 17, 18. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. All right. So I've been wondering, just thinking about how we could each and collectively wake the fuck up to the basics of love, divine love. I know you're wondering too. So I have a little story about a monk and a sandwich. But first, I'm going to unpack the definition of common sense. So capital C, common, capital S, sense. And then I'm going to rant for a minute, if you will allow me to. Of course, you will allow me to. You press play. Common is this. Common is common ground. Common is human family. Common is we all come from the same source. Common means all sentient beings. Sense is wisdom. Wisdom, at least how I look at it, as a root virtue, or what I would call, because the Catholics absconded the term virtue and made it pious for all of us, I would call it a soul quality, capital soul, capital quality. And wisdom as a soul quality considers everyone, all beings, in the problem and the solution. So I think the best way to tell if an idea is actually wise or not is to see if it takes all of the players into consideration. Consideration is such a beautiful word. So like we'd ask ourselves, how might this proposed solution or say policy or practice harm or benefit all of the different parties involved? Benefit, good; harm, bad. So it's like if you're a farmer, any farmers out there, you want to have happy chickens, but you know, the wise farmers know, you also need to have happy coyotes. They each have a role to play in the ecosystem. How do I know this? I know this because I actually grew up on a farm. I grew up in a little town called Woodsley in Essex County in Ontario. And we didn't have no coyotes, but we had ecosystems to consider. Actually, this has nothing to do with the wisdom of the happy farmers. We had beans and we had corn, and we actually rented a house on this acreage, and the farm lady across the driveway, Rosemary, bless Rosemary, was like my second mother. Anyway, I'll find some meaning in that story someday. How I know this, that you got to have happy chickens and happy coyotes, is because I watched this great documentary called The Biggest Little Farm. And this couple from Santa Monica knew nothing about farming. They had this romantic notion. They got acreages, or I should say an acreage, many acres equals an acreage. And over many years, I think it was at least 5 years, maybe a decade. You can see I'm really testing my retention here. They learned that every player in the ecosystem of a farm, from the groundhogs and the rats and the chickens and the hens and the pigs and the freaking coyotes that were driving them crazy, had a role to play. So for many years, they were shooting the coyotes. It took them years to kind of work up the gumption to kill the coyotes, because the coyotes were killing the chickens and the pigs. And then they thought, well, this is life. This is part of farming. We got to shoot the coyotes. But because wisdom, because common sense, their hearts got the better of them. Actually, logic got to them before their hearts did. And they realized that the coyotes played this amazing function where the coyotes were keeping the groundhog population down. When they were shooting the coyotes, the little groundhogs were proliferating like bunnies, and that presented its own kind of problem. When they stopped shooting the coyotes, then the groundhogs were snacks, coyote snacks, and everybody moved together in harmony. So that was a long way of telling you should actually watch the documentary, Biggest Little Farm. But back to common sense and monks and sandwiches. So common means all sentient beings, and sense simply means benefit. So common sense is the benefit of all sentient beings. That's what common sense is. Not just some sentient beings, right? So it seems we're a little short on the common sense on the planet. Humanity's common sense tank it's running on empty. I think our madness, our mad shadow is surfacing. And I use the word our really intentionally. It's our shadow. It's not their shadow. There is only one shadow, one collective shadow, and we all scoop from it. We all get a little cup of crazy from that collective shadow. It's ours. If we think that the madness is spewing just from them, just from the faction of people that's in opposition to our amazing beliefs, it's just coming from the crazed conservatives, or the hypnotized woke, or the kill all the animals carnivores, oh my God, or the delusional hippie vegans who are going to die of kale, or the new Christians. I see a lot of new Christians popping up. I have theories on that. Or the New Agers, or that all the madness is just from the ignorant, vaxxed people, or those freedom fighters, or the foolish trad wives. So many labels for people to hate, or it's just coming from the angry feminists. If we think it's just coming from them, we've already missed the common and the sense in common sense. And just, by the way, a little side note, to talk about me for a second. In the cacophony of social input, most of which, well, could I call it unsolicited input? Not really. I mean, I'm in the game. This is part of it. Like putting stuff out on socials and having opinions. I guess input is not unsolicited, but in the beauty that is my DMs and my various social media comments, I have been, you could say, accused of being all of the above in one way or another, of New Ager or ignorant vaxxed. Some people thought I did that. Some people thought I was a freedom fighter. Some people, I got called recently trad wife sympathetic. I'm just like, what? What does that even mean? Some people think I'm woke. Some people think I'm on the side of the conservatives. I've been vegan. I've been carnivore. Everybody's pissed off at me for what I eat. But no one can seem to figure out which side I'm on, unless like you're in my life. But I can clear this up really fast. I play for Team Love. And we are recruiting new members every day. Most every individual on the planet right now, with the exception maybe of some masters, or it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're on the fringe or you're in the mainstream, everybody is getting a cup of that shadow. We're all being ordained, soul ordained, I would say, to grapple with, to struggle with, to transmute the fierce shadow content and all of this judgment that is surfacing. I think, if it's not conscious or unconscious self-hatred of your own self, it's judgment of others, or it's a fear of the future, which is something I really have to meditate on a regular basis. Dissolve my fear of the future. Just trust in God. Trust in my higher self. Trust in, hello, humanity. I think the collective ego is fighting for its life. And the ego stays alive. How does the ego stay alive? it picks sides. The ego stays alive by picking sides and by ignoring the fundamental needs of humanity. Okay, now with my breathy rant complete, I feel like my little monk and sandwich story doesn't really match the size of my heartbreak, my utter heartbreak in humanity, or my complete capital soul quality faith, capital faith in humanity, because I have so much faith. Like I just feel like it's a done deal. Might be difficult to see. That's why we have faith. Faith is believing that the light exists even when it's dark. But love's gonna win. Love will always have the last word. And its word will be, you're welcome. But anyway, I'm going to give you my little story about the monk. And I hope, if anything, we'll buy more sandwiches for each other, Okay, it's a metaphor. Here we go. So, I was on a flight. I was seated next to, guess who? A Buddhist monk, shaved head, crimson robes. And the flight attendant, a dude, is going by with the food cart, and the monk says, "Sandwich, please." And the flight attendant, of course, tells him, "Well, that'll be $8. This was a while ago. I distinctly remember the cost of the sandwich. That'll be $8. It's probably like $38 now. And the monk, he was confused. He was like very confused. And he said, "But I'm hungry." And he actually said this a few times. This exchange went back and forth. The monk actually got a bit indignant and irritated. Monk says, "I'm hungry." And the flight attendant is now really confused. And the flight attendant says, "Well, okay, it's $8. And then the monk says, "I don't have any money." And he doesn't see how this could be a problem. Like the monk is operating with complete innocence with a side of indignance. And then the monk puts out his hand for the sandwich and says, "I'm hungry." And now, inside, like part of me is laughing. I want to cry. I'm also enraged. Mr. Flight Attendant is totally flustered. He asks the monk if he has a credit card. Like he's not quite getting this, And I catch the flight attendant's eye and I just kind of whisper. And I knew this wasn't necessary, but maybe it was. Maybe I changed the course of all of this. I don't know. But I say, "He doesn't have any money." Like, as if to say he actually doesn't have money, because vow of poverty and all, monks are like that. But what I'm really doing is I'm trying to intonate, what can we do about this? He actually doesn't have any money. What can we do? And the exchange with the flight attendant was warm. And then he said, he had a bit of a lilt and he said, "You know what? It's my birthday today." This is the flight attendant, by the way, not the monk. He says, "You know what? It's my birthday today and I'm going to buy you a sandwich." And then he pulled out his own credit card, got his wallet out of his flight attendant pants, and he swiped his own card and he handed the monk a ham and cheese. Now, the first thing that crosses my mind here is like, aren't flight attendants empowered to give free food when it's obviously the right thing to do? Can't you just give a guy a sandwich, You don't have, it was such a beautiful gesture. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to pay for the sandwich for the birthday present, and that you shouldn't have to use your own money to pay for a customer's sandwich who's hungry, who's a monk, who's devoted to his life to the cessation of suffering for all beings, Give him the ham and cheese. But it's not common sense, is it? I don't think the monk really understood that there'd been an actual payment transaction. I don't think, he had no money. He was definitely not packing his gold Amex. The monk just nodded with appreciation, and then he just peeled off that sandwich wrap like he hadn't eaten in days, and maybe he hadn't eaten in days. Matthew 25, verse 35. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. Common sense might appear to be counterculture, but it's not counterintuitive. Follow your heart. I'm so glad you're here. With love, always, Danielle. Thank you so much for listening, for feeling, for spreading the word. With love.